Exhibition of Gnostic Saints, Ancient and Latter Day. Number 1 of 72, Sir Aleister Crowley. Sir Edward Alexander Aleister Crowley, 1875 Era Vulgaris. 271 Era Nuit by Tau Aperium. English poet, painter, mountaineer, magician, and prophet. The physical vehicle of 2 Megatherion, head of the AA, and head of OTO in the English-speaking world under Reuss, and Reuss's successor as OHO of OTO. Crowley wrote Liber 15, the Gnostic Mass, in Russia in 1913 Era Vulgaris. Most readers of this essay will already be familiar with the life of Aleister Crowley. Those who are not are referred to the references listed below. References: Kamel, Charles Richard, Aleister Crowley, The Man, The Mage, The Poet, University Books, Inc., New Hyde Park, New York, 1962. Crow, W.B., A History of Magic, Witchcraft, and Occultism, Aquarian Press, London, 1968. Crowley, Aleister, Works, Fuller, Captain, J.F.C., The Star in the West, Walter Scott, London, 1907. Grant, Kenneth, Aleister Crowley and the Hidden God, Samuel Weiser, New York, 1974. Rigardi, Israel, The Eye in the Triangle, Llewellyn Publications, St. Paul, Minnesota, 1970. Roberts, Susan, The Magician of the Golden Dawn, Contemporary Books, Chicago, 1978. Skinner, Stephen. The Magical Diaries of Aleister Crowley, Samuel Weiser, York Beach, Maine, 1979-1981. Stevenson, P.R., and Israel Rigardi. The Legend of Aleister Crowley, 1930. Llewellyn Publications, St. Paul, Minnesota, 1970. Simmons, John, The King of the Shadow Realm. Gerald Duckworth and Company, Limited, London, 1989. Simmons, John and Kenneth Grant, editors. The Magical Record of the Beast, 666. Duckworth, London, 1972. Original publication date, 2/1/97. Originally published in Red Flame, number 2, Mystery of Mystery, a primer of Thelemic ecclesiastical Gnosticism by Tau Aperium and Helena, Berkeley, California, 1995, Era Vulgaris. Recorded by Christopher Brightnell Cohen. Exhibition of Gnostic Saints, Ancient and Latter Day. Number 2 of 72, Dr. Theodor Reuss, Dr. Albert Karl Theodor Reuss, 33 degree, 90 degree, 96 degree, X degree, by Tau Aperium. Theodor Reuss was an Anglo-German tantric occultist, utopian socialist, journalist, singer, and promoter of women's liberation, and the successor to Karl Kellner as head of OTO. Reuss was born the son of an innkeeper at Augsburg on June 28, 1855, era Vulgaris. He was a professional singer in his youth and was privileged to work under Richard Wagner, whom he first met. Along with Wagner's patron, King Ludwig II of Bavaria, in 1873. He took part in the first performance of Wagner's Parsifal at Bayreuth in 1882. He later became a newspaper correspondent and traveled frequently as such to England, where he became a Mason in 1876. He also spent some time there as a journalist and as a music hall singer under the stage name Charles Theodor. In 1880, in Munich, he participated in an attempt to revive Adam Weishaupt's Bavarian Order of Illuminati. In 1885, in England, he joined the British Social League, which some say he joined to spy on Karl Marx's daughter for the German Secret Service. While in England, he became friends with William Wynne Westcott, the supreme magus of the Societas Rosicruciana in Anglia, and one of the founders of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. Westcott provided Reuss with a charter dated July 26, 1901. For the Swedenborgian Rite of Masonry, and a letter of authorization dated February 24, 1902, to found a high council in Germania of the Societas Rosicruciana in Anglia. Gerard Encausse provided him with a charter dated June 24, 1901, designating him Special Inspector for the Martinist Order in Germany. In 1888, in Berlin, he joined with Leopold Angel of Dresden, Max Hahn, and August Weinholz in another effort to revive the Illuminati order. In 1895, he began to discuss the formation of Ordo Templi Orientis with Karl Kellner. The discussions between Reuss and Kellner did not lead to any positive results at the time, allegedly because Kellner disapproved with Reuss's connection with Engel. According to Reuss, upon his final separation from Engel, in June of 1902, Kellner contacted him and the two agreed to proceed with the establishment of the Oriental Templar Order by seeking authorization to work the various rites of high-grade masonry. Westcott assisted Reuss to contact the English Masonic scholar John Yarker, 1833 to 1913. Along with his associates Franz Hartmann and Henry Klein. He activated the Masonic rites of Memphis and Mizraim, and a branch of the Scottish rites in Germany, with charters for Yarker. Reuss received letters, patent as a Sovereign Grand Inspector General 33 degree, of the Cernau, Scottish Rite from Yarker, dated September 24, 1902. On the same date, Yarker appears to have issued a warrant to Reuss, Franz Hartmann, and Henry Klein. to operate a sovereign sanctuary, 33 degree to 95 degree, of the Scottish, Memphis, and Mizraim rites. The original document is not extant, but a transcript of this warrant was published in Reuss's newsletter, the Oriflamme, in 1911, which commenced publication in 1902. Yarker issued a charter confirming Reuss's authority to operate said rites on July 1, 1904, and Reuss published a transcript of an additional confirming charter dated June 24, 1905. Reuss and Kellner together prepared a brief manifesto for their order in 1903. Which was published the next year in the Oriflamme. When Karl Kellner died in 1905, the leadership of the Academia Massonica of OTO fell upon Reuss's shoulder, and he incorporated all his other organizations under its banner, developing the 3 degrees of Academia Massonica, available to Masons only, into a coherent, self-contained initiatory system open to both men and women. He promulgated a constitution for this new, enlarged OTO on June 21, 1906 in London, his place of residence since January 1906, and the next month proclaimed himself outer head of the order, OHO. That same year he published Lingam Yoni, which was a German translation of Hargrave Jennings' work Phallism, and issued a warrant to Rudolf Steiner, 1861 to 1825, who was at the time, praises be to the angel Michael, the Secretary General of the German branch of the Theosophical Society, making him Deputy Grand Master of a subordinate OTO, Memphis, Mizraim chapter, and Grand Council called Mystica Eterna. In Berlin, Steiner went on to found the Anthroposophical Society in 1912 and ended his association with Reuss in 1914. On June 24, 1908, Reuss attended Encausse's International Masonic and Spiritualist Conference in Paris. At this conference, Reuss issued to Encausse a warrant to establish a Supreme Grand Council General of the Unified Rites of Antient and Primitive Masonry for the Grand Orient of France and its dependencies at Paris, and possibly received authority in Église catholique Gnostic. He also appointed Dr. Arnold Krum Heller Hirakoka, 1879 to 1949, as his official representative for Latin America. While living in London, Reuss became acquainted with Aleister Crowley. In 1910, he made Crowley a 7th degree of OTO based on Crowley's previously held 33 degree in the Scottish Rite. And in 1912, he conferred upon him the 9th degree and appointed him National Grand Master General X degree for the OTO in the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland by charter dated June 1, 1912. Crowley's appointment included authority over an English language rite of the lower Masonic degrees of OTO, which was given the name Mysteria Mystica Maxima, or M:(M:)M:. In 1913, Crowley issued a constitution for the MMM and the manifesto of the MMM, which he subsequently redrafted and issued as Liber 52. The manifesto of the OTO. In 1913, Crowley wrote Liber 15, the Gnostic Mass for Reuss's Gnostic Catholic Church. Crowley also dedicated his mystery play, The Ship, 1913, and a collection of poetry, The Giant's Thumb, 1915, to Reuss. In 1914, at the outset of World War I, Reuss left England and returned to Germany. He worked briefly for the Red Cross in Berlin, then, in 1916, moved to Basel, Switzerland. While there, he established a national Grand Lodge of Mystic Temple. Again, while there in Basel, Switzerland, he established an national Grand Lodge and Mystic Temple of OTO and the Hermetic Brotherhood of Light at Monte Verita, a utopian commune near Ascona, founded in 1900 by Henri Odenkoven and Ida Hoffmann, which functioned as a center for the progressive underground. On January 22, 1917, Reuss published a manifesto for this national Grand Lodge, which was called Verita Mystica. On the same date, he published a revised OTO constitution based in a large part on Crowley's 1913 constitution based in large part on Crowley's 1913 constitution of the MMM, with a synopsis of degrees and an abridgment of the message of the Master Therion appended. Reuss held a national congress for organizing the reconstruction of society on practical cooperative lines at Monte Verita from August 15 to 25, 1917. This congress included readings of Crowley's poetry on August 22nd and a recitation of Crowley's Gnostic Mass on August 24. On October 24, 1917, Reuss chartered an OTO lodge, Libertas et Fraternitas, in Zurich. This lodge later placed itself under the Masonic jurisdiction of the Swiss Grand Lodge Alpina. In 1918, Reuss published his German translation of Crowley's Gnostic Mass. In a note at the end of his translation of Liber 15, he referred to himself as, simultaneously, the sovereign patriarch and primate of the Gnostic Catholic Church and Gnostic legate to Switzerland of the Iglesie Gnostique Universelle. Acknowledging Jean Bricaud, 1881 to 1934, as sovereign patriarch of that church. The issuance of this document can be viewed as the birth of the Thelemic EGC as an independent organization under the umbrella of OTO, with Reuss as its first patriarch. The issuance of this document can be viewed as the birth of the Thelemic EGC as an independent organization under the umbrella of OTO, with Reuss as its first patriarch. Reuss was clearly impressed with Thelema. Crowley's Gnostic Mass, which Reuss translated into German and had recited at his national congress at Monte Verita, is an explicitly Thelemic ritual. In an undated letter to Crowley, received in 1917, Reuss reported excitedly that he had read the message of the Master Therion to a gathering at Monte Verita and that he was translating the Book of the Law into German. He added, "Let this new encourage you. We live in your work." Reuss left Monte Verita sometime before November 1918. On May 10, 1919, Reuss issued a Gage of Amity document to Matthew McBlain Thompson, founder of the ill-fated American Masonic Federation. On September 18, 1919, Reuss was reconsecrated by Brigade, thus receiving this Antioch succession, and reappointed as Gnostic legate to Switzerland for Brigade's Iglesia Gnostique Universelle. In 1920, Odenkoven and Hoffman abandoned Monte Verita in 1920 to establish a second colony in Brazil, and Reuss published a document titled The Program of Construction and the Guiding Principle of the Gnostic Neo-Christians, OTO, which reads, Theodor Reuss, The Program of Construction and the Guiding Principles of the Gnostic Neo-Christians, OTO, published in 1920. Transcripts of the original German original in P.R. Koenig, Der kleine Theodor Reuss Rede, see photo at the right, also in, and this is parareligion.ch, also in Anthony Naylor's P.R. Koenig, OTO Rituals and Sex Magic, partly identical with the Parsifal texts, sex magic being another word for Tantra. Guiding Principles of a New Civilization and Religion. Novo Ordo Secloricum. Mankind, tortured by the World War, needs a new faith, a new Christianity, and a new civilization built upon it. That the much praised European civilization and the Christian Church were unable to prevent the cruelties of this world war or the greed and hatred of the peace that was meant to end this world war, this alone is sufficient proof that Christianity as it reigns today and modern civilization it created are no longer capable of living and must be replaced by a new Christianity and a new civilization. But mankind also demands a new faith, because the old belief in God, which flowed from the Christian teachings as brewed by the Church Fathers, has the great majority of the members of the Christian Church long become a fairy tale, because it was unable to withstand the biting criticism of modern science and the belief in mankind. Belief in brotherliness was exceptionally, thoroughly destroyed by the Peace of Versailles. Much more than by the events of was themselves. For the makers of the Peace of Versailles had decoyed the peoples of America and Europe into the field by the slogan, for freedom and humanity, for justice and equality, to fight a crusade against the imperialism of German barbarity. In the end, the gentleman Clemenceau and Lord George exploited the naivete of the German Michel, who, confiding in the glamorous casting and treacherous promises of the leaders of the Entente, that not the German people, but only the imperialism of the Hohenzollern was to be exterminated, finally abandoned fighting and resistance in order to erect the Anglo-French world imperialism on the deceived and enslaved German people. Protobantu. For their own undoing, however, Clemenceau and Lloyd George also destroyed all faith in humanity and brotherliness in their allies through the Versailles machinations, so that millions of people, victors and vanquished alike, have lost all faith in God and man. The community of Gnostic Templars, or Neo-Christians, abbreviated as OTO, which already before the war had numerous adherents in America, Holland, Bohemia, France, Russia, Italy, etc., now steps out from the reserve it cultivated until now, in order to bring to tortured mankind the glad tidings of the Gnostic Christians, and the new civilization springing therefore. The message of the OTO is freedom, justice, love. The freedom of the OTO is freedom from original sin, and the freedom to execute the will of the Godhead. It does say in Liber Legis, do what thou wilt, but it also said, but remember that you will have to render account for all those deeds. That is the law of karma. So that not willfulness and unbridled behavior, but strict discipline is true freedom. Highest self-culture, iron self-discipline, that is OTO freedom. All freedom not controlled by strict self-discipline is licentiousness, willfulness, lawlessness, leading to chaos. Do what thou wilt is also in no wise identical with do what you like, but do what is thy will. But examine whether what thou wilt be God's will also. Only when your will is in agreement with the will of God can you put it into practice, but then with intense concentration. Justice is the second principle and refers to the purpose of man's life on earth and the destiny of mortal man. The purpose of man's existence of earth is faithful devotion to duty. Everybody must, whether well-born or lowly, educated or uneducated, whether day laborer, peasant, artisan, professor, judge, merchant, artist, or king, etc. Simply, everybody must do his duty to his utmost ability wherever fate has put him. This is his purpose, the fulfillment of God's law of justice. All is law in the universe. All is law in the universe. All is law in the universe. Life on earth is also subject unto it. Whoever lets this thought ripen in himself to its utmost possibility will find the solution of many questions that worry him. The phrase is hard, but truth is always hard and encloses the duty to work of every individual. Beautiful, of enthusiastic beauty, is only love, and love is the highest law, love under control of the will. Love is the reward of overcoming self, the basis of all brotherhood, the source of strength for devotion to duty. She makes us accept hard truth, leads us to conscious union with God, and enables us to approach God during this life on earth, and really to experience at one with God. The Master Therion says, the act of love consummated with overflowing energy, under control of the will, is the act of God. a sacramental act, is in God, with God, at one mint. A man to whom it was granted to unite with God under control of will in the godly sacramental love act is a channel for the deity. Yet, says Liber Legis, although much is said in the law of highest love, of enthusiastic, yielding, selfless, flaming, fiery, overflowing love, there is no word about sentimental love. This also one has to ripen within oneself, because the results are seen in 1,000 channels of earthly daily life. They contribute to beautify it. They build a bridge to art. Love alone makes life bearable, life otherwise so cold and often cruel. The above-mentioned principles and inferences to be drawn therefrom have been concentrated by the OTO into the following fundamental canon of belief. God and the world, visible as well as invisible, are an all-embracing, limitless realm, the universe, consisting of the conscious primal energy, or creative potency, the positive force, and the unconscious primal substance, world, egg, or matrix. The negative force which create through union primal creation, new worlds with them, and attract or create creatures of similar principles. The likeness to God of created beings is shown by the fact that the primal creative potency inhabits them as well. The potency is the innate proof to the creature of descent from God, the original creator. In this sense are to be understood the words of the Bible, and God created man in his image. In God's image he created him. In order to find the truly complete solution of the world riddle, one has to disregard the fundamentally erroneous but common distinction between spirit, soul, and matter. The soul is only to be regarded as a spiritual thing, spiritual agent, which has existed from the beginning of time as primal sensation in the primal act of creation. This primal sensation in man is the yearning of the split-off part to reunite with the mother principle, therefore religere and religion. Because man cannot comprehend God through his intellect, but only feel him through his soul, in the heart, one says, although the bearer of sensation is the sympathetic nervous system, which after physical death returns to God. Without the primal sensation, there would be no creation or creatures. For the practical execution of the above stated principles, the order seeks to establish communities founded on cooperative principles of people free from sin, freed from the Christian ecclesiastical original sin. For the creation of such communities, only such people are suitable, who are conceived. For the creation of such communities, only such people are suitable, who are convinced of the existence of a soul, which enables us to approach resemblance to God, or he who is like unto God, who have understood that selfish action is the source of all human ills, and that we prepare our lots after death during our life on earth, according to the law of karma, who are filled with the truth of this saying of man, only he who has understood the holy doctrine concerning the holiness of God's organs is truly free and liberated from all sin. Liberation from original sin is the true freedom. We still wish to constitute a community of sexually free people who are without sexual sin. We wish to create men who will not have to be ashamed of their creative organs. Because of the Christian civilization still reigning today, this attempt will meet great difficulties, but a beginning has already been made and been successful with a small circle. On a large scale, such an attempt will finally succeed only when the new generation will be brought up from earliest youth according to the principles of the new moral code. Youth must look upon the sexual organs as something wholly right from early childhood. Their functions must be explained to boys and girls as holy actions. As soon as the mother notices that the sexual forces are beginning to appear, these doctrines must be given out by parents in the most natural manner from earliest childhood, and in school, men and women doctors, instead of the present teachers of religion, will exercise priestly office and teach doctrines with scientific basis as teachings for this life. On the foundation laid by these physiologists, priestly doctors, the teachings for the other life will be then given by doctors of the soul, spiritual priests. At the moment, it is the other way around. From the earliest childhood, children are crammed with otherworldly teachings and religious fables, which collapse completely when the child grows up, because the adult finds that they do not respect facts. This belated discovery produces a struggle in developed people, which brings an immense amount of unhappiness and misfortune for all that were misled in this fashion. People less advanced become liars and hypocrites, which encourages moral catastrophes and has consequences such as we now have to witness at the end of the war. Therefore, new morals have become essential. In future, the doctor-priest, under the parents' supervision, will teach children from earliest youth that the sex organs are holy, and that they have to be particularly guarded and protected, because in actions which later on be done through those organs, invisible God will make himself manifest to man. Because this act, accomplished with these organs, is a repetition on earth of God's original act of creation, in which God reveals himself to us, works through us, and through whose execution we always renew our union with God, and constantly create new beings according to his will and command in his image. A youth brought up according to such principles will not only be steeled and proof against the misuse of the sex organs, but they will also begin very early to comprehend God and to believe in this God, because they recognize a link between God and man in the creative act, which they feel binds them to the Godhead. Belief reared on this base will be so firm, so marvelous, that it will be able to move mountains. Plan of a neo-Christian community. The basic principles of the construction program of the Gnostic Templars and Neo-Christians, OTO, have been condensed in the following essay as a practical political program. Persons of the same language and same race form a closed people's community, the state. All toil, all means of production, all natural resources such as coal, iron, etc., all large-scale exploitation of natural products such as large-scale farming, vine growing, etc., all public transport, railways, shipping, all public welfare institutions, trade, communication, such as postal services, telegraph, hospitals, orphanages, schools, museums, art institutes, all available capital, in paper or bare money, which exceeds a value of, say, 10,000 mark, is common property of every member of the people. In England, one called it nationalization of property. Private property is abolished on principle, but each responsible member of the community can claim as his or her personal property everything he or she acquired through his or her own labor for personal use. This comprises clothes, books, household utensils, but excludes objects of luxury, things made of gold, jewelry, etc. Also, he may own during his present life a small piece of arable land allotted to him or her for building or planting. Within the community, bare money is not allowed. No member of the community is allowed to own money or securities worth more than 10,000 mark, and these also return to the community after his death. Nobody is allowed to possess any securities yielding dividends. These, as far as they exist within the community, are common property for the benefit of the state, as, for example, for trade with other strange peoples' communities. Every member of the community, man or woman, over 18 is obliged to labor daily according to his capacities for the wealth of the people's community. A jury of fellow workers, with 2 members chosen by the accused, will decide in doubtful cases what, according to his capacities, may mean in cases where a person protests against work allotted to him. People refusing to work will be punished by long, public, forced labor. Work to be done for the community not to exceed 36 hours per week. Wages due for such work to be credited by the community executive to each worker with the common community account, including those people who, refusing to work, are forced to work the full 36 hours per week. They will also be paid. In return for the fulfillment of the duty to work, the community guarantees to keep each single member of the community so that they have free of cost, controlled, rationed means of living, always under punishment or otherwise, including free housing, heating, light, clothes rationing, instruction, care of the sick, education of children, entertainment like theaters, music, art, etc., and a free funeral. All persons over 60, as well as the sick and permanent invalids, are freed from the duty to work, but receive the same free advantages as the fit. The right to inherit is abolished in principle. Only movable objects of personal use which have less value than 10 mark can be willed by parents to their own children. All large-scale trade, especially with foreign countries, all industry, except for small hand production, is done on account of the community. All works of art are property of the community, in order to spur on each single comrade to do the best he can, be it in the field of craft, trade, industry, art, farming, cultivation of animals, household, etc., or any other type of work. People's prize feasts will be instituted each year, whence those people who had done best during the year will be publicly praised, crowned with laurels, and rewarded. The value of the prize consists of real and ideal values. All who have won first prize will be named as judges for the following year. Also, they will have preferment, with travels for amusement, for example, which are forbidden outside the country to all other members of the community in order to encourage settled habits. Journets of research will constantly be made, paid for by the community, but only prize winners will be chosen for them. The people, every man and woman over 20, every year elects an executive council who has to deal with the community's business. This council is aided by experts of all sorts of work, subordinated to it, which are elected by the people, direct every 7 years. Re-election is permissible. Order in the interior to be preserved by a body, town watch, community watch, field watch, elected by the community for protection against the exterior. Each man and woman has to put her person at the disposal of the community. For this purpose, they have to undergo a yearly training for the 17 onwards, lasting 6 months when 17, 2 months when 18, and then each year a fortnight's refreshing training. All lawsuits are cost-free. Persons who molest the law by unjustified complaints, make false accusations, or swear false oaths, murder, steal, etc., will be punished by publicly dishonoring forced labor, again for which they will be paid. The public law will be dealt and pronounced by judges elected by the people. All relations between a man and a woman will be regarded as a marriage. Children bear the mother's name. Each child is brought up by the community. If applied for, children up to 6 can be brought up with the mother at home. Every man, woman, boy, and girl over 14 will be regularly examined by the medical delegates of the Supreme People's Health Board. Persons, male or female, who have not been found capable by the Supreme Medical Board of producing healthy children are not allowed to wed. People who produce children despite this decree will be punished by public forced labor. They will have to care for those children. Religion will be a private matter. But as the reigning Christian church, built on the doctrines of the church fathers, have abandoned the pure doctrines of original Christianity and have proved absolutely incapable of diminishing, even to a slight extent, the low animal cruelty current amongst their own externally most zealous adherents. the state will support and encourage the cult of the revivified original Christianity, Catholicism. While in the community of Gnostic neo-Christians. Attention! The above construction program can only be realized through the means of peaceful social development and never, we've tried, through violent revolution. The head of the OTO community salutes you, whomever she may be. Read by Christopher Brightnell Cohen. A return to a discussion of Dr. Albert Karl Theodor Reuss. On July 17, 1920, he attended the Congress of the World Federation of Universal Freemasonry in Zurich, which lasted several days. Reuss, with Bricaud's support, advocated the adoption of the religion of Crowley's Gnostic Mass as the official religion for all members of the World Federation of Universal Freemasonry in possession of the 18th degree of the Scottish Rite. Reuss's efforts in this regard were a failure, and he left the Congress after the first day. On May 10, 1921, Reuss issued X-degree charters to Charles Stansfeld Jones and Heinrich Jonker to serve as Grand Masters for the USA and Germany, respectively. On July 30, 1921, Reuss issued another Gage of Amity document, this time to H. Spencer Lewis, founder of AMORC, the San Jose, California-based Rosicrucian organization. Reuss returned to Germany in September of 1921, settling in Munich. There is some reason to believe that Reuss suffered a stroke in the spring of 1920, but this is not entirely certain. Crowley wrote to W.T. Smith in March of 1943. The late OHO, after his first stroke of paralysis, got into a panic about the work being carried on. He hastily issued honorary diplomas of the 7th degree to various people, some of whom had no right to anything at all, and some of whom were only cheap crooks. Shortly after appointing him his viceroy for Australia, Crowley appeared to have corresponded with his student Frank Bennett and discussed with him his doubts about Reuss's continuing ability to effectively govern the order. It would appear that Reuss discovered the correspondence. He wrote Crowley an angry, defensive response on November 9, 1921, in which he appeared to distance himself and OTO from Thelema, which, as shown above, he had previously embraced. Crowley replied to Reuss's letter on November 23, 1921, and stated in his letter, "It is my will to be OHO, and Frater Superior of the Order, and avail myself of your abdication, to proclaim myself as such." He signed the letter Baphomet, OHO. Reuss's response is not extant, but Crowley recounts in his confessions that Reuss resigned the office of OHO in 1922 in my favor. However, it does not appear that Crowley waited for Reuss's response to assume his duties. In a diary entry for November 27, 1921, Crowley wrote, "I have proclaimed myself OHO Frater Superior of the Order of Oriental Templars. Reuss died on October 28, 1923. In a letter to Heinrich Janke, dated February 14, 1925, Crowley stated the following: Reuss was very uncertain in temper and in many ways unreliable. In his last years, he seems to have completely lost his grip, even accusing the Book of the Law of communistic tendencies, than which no statement could be more absurd. Yet it seems that he must have been to some extent correctly led, on account of his having made the appointments of yourself and Frater Ached, and designating me in his letter as his successor. In a letter to Charles Stansfield Jones, dated Sun in Capricorn, Anno 20, December 1924 to January 1925, Crowley said, in the OHO's last letter to me, he invited me to become his successor as OHO and Frater Superior. Reuss's letter designating Crowley his successor as OHO has not been found, but no credible documentation has surfaced which would indicate that Reuss ever designated any alternative successor. Deductive reasoning prevents attrition. Reuss's writings include the matrimonial question for an anarchist point of view. Reuss's writings include the matrimonial question from an anarchistic point of view, 1887, Die Mysterien der Illuminaten, 1894, Geschichte des Illuminatenordens, 1896, Was muss man von der Freimaurer wissen, 1901, Was ist Okkultismus und wie erlangt man okkulte Kraft, 1904, Was muss man von Richard Wagner und seinen Tondramen wissen, 1903, Lingam Yoni oder Die Mysterien des Geschlechtskultus, 1906, Allgemein Satzungen des Ordens der Orientalischen Templar OTO, 1906, Parsifal und das Insulte Geheimnis, 1914, Constitution of the Ancient Order of Oriental Templars, OTO, Ordo Templi Orientis, with an introduction and a synopsis of the degrees of the OTO, 1917, De Gnostische Messe, 1920, Das Aufbauprogramm und die Leitsätze der Gnostischen Neochristen, 1920, and numerous articles published in his periodical Oriflamme, 1902 to 1914. References: Howe, Ehrlich, Theodor Reuss, Irregular Freemasonry in Germany, 1900 to 23, and Aris Quatuor Coronati, February 1978, König, Peter Robert, Das OTO Phänomenon, ARW, München, 1994, Maryland Peregrinus, Theodor Reuss. Ineri, OTO, Ecclesiae Gnosticae Catholicae Canon Mise. Die Gnostische Messe, 1918, privately published by the Oriflamme, 1920, translated by Marcus M. Junkers, Müller, Helmut, and Ehrlich Howe. Merlin Peregrinus van Untergrund des Abendlandes, Könighuizen and Neumann, Würzburg, 1986. Reuss, Theodor. Henry. Constitution of the Ancient Order of Oriental Templars, OTO. Order Templi Orientis, with an introduction and a synopsis of the degrees of the OTO, 1917. Reuss, Theodor. Ordo Templi Orientis, Hermetic Brotherhood of Light, a National Grand Lodge and Mystic Temple, Verita Mystica, or Ascona Manifesto. Ascona, Switzerland, 1917. Reuss, Theodor. Henry, the Program of Construction and the Guiding Principles of the Gnostic Neo-Christians, OTO, 1920. Reuss, Theodor. Introduction to Lingam Yoni, Thalism by Hargrave Jennings. Verlag, Wilson, Berlin, 1906. Shepard, Leslie, editor. Encyclopedia of Occultism and Parapsychology, 2nd edition, Gale Research Company, Detroit, Michigan, 1984. Simmons, John Kenneth Grant, editors, The Magical Record of the Beast, 666. Duckworth, London, 1972. Original publication date of this article, 1995. Updated 1999. Originally published in Red Flame No. 2, Mystery of Mysteries, a primer of Thelemic Ecclesiastical Gnosticism by Tao Aperion. And Helena, Berkeley, California, 1995, Ervogel. December 8th, 2020, Ervogatus, 9:48 a.m., Hour of Mercury, 9:17 a.m. to 10:06 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Anno V6, Sol 17 degrees. Anno V6, Anno Nuit, 1:16. Sol 17 degrees Sagittarius. Luna 28 degrees Virgo. Dies Martes, December 8, 2020, Ervogatus, 9:48 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Do what thy wilt shall be the whole of the law. AL 140. Love is the law, love under will. AL 157. Christopher Brightnell Cohen, reader. Exhibition of Gnostic Saints, Ancient and Latter Day. 3 of 72. Dr. Gerard Encausse, 1865 to 1916, Ervogatus, by Tao Aperion. Gerard Encausse, usually known by his pseudonym Papus, was a Spanish-born French physician, hypnotist, and popularizer of occultism. Encausse's pseudonym, Papus, was taken from Levy's Noctemeron of Apollonius of Diana, supplement to Dogme et Rituel de la Haute Magie, and means physician. Papus is primarily remembered as an author of books on magic, Kabbalah, and the tarot, and as a prominent figure in the various occultist organizations and Parisian spiritualist and literary circles of the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Ervogatus. He was born at La Coruña in Spain on July 13, 1865, of a Spanish mother and a French father, Louis Encausse, a chemist. His family moved to Paris when he was 4 years old, and he received his education there. As a young man, Encausse spent a great deal of time at the Bibliothèque Nationale, studying the Kabbalah, the tarot, the sciences of magic and alchemy, and the writings of Eliphas Levi. He joined the French Theosophical Society shortly after it was founded by Madame Blavatsky in 1884-85, but he resigned shortly after joining because he disliked the Theosophical Society's emphasis on Eastern occultism. He was also a member of the H.B. of L. in 1888. He and his friend Lucien Chamuel founded the Librairie du Melville and its monthly review, Les Nations, which remained in publication until 1914. Although Pappos claimed as his spiritual master the mysterious magician and healer known as Le Maître Philippe Nizier, his first actual teacher in the intellectual aspects of occultism was the Marquis Joseph Alexander Saint Ives de Elvedre, 1842 to 1910 era Vulgaris. Saint Ives had inherited the papers of one of the great founders of French occultism, Antoine Fabre de Levet, 1762 to 1825 era Vulgaris, and it was probably Saint Ives who introduced Pappos to the Marquis Stanislas de Raita, 1860 to 1898 era Vulgaris. In 1888, Pappos, Saint Ives, and de Guaita joined the Josephine Paladin and Oswald Worth to found the Kabbalistic Order of the Rose Croix. On May 12 to 15, 1891, Pappos participated in the famous duels between de Guaita and Jules Bois, a writer who had attacked de Guaita in print. Bois had become involved in the magical war between Guaita and his rival Abbé Boulon. Boulon was the head of a schismatic branch of the Œuvre de la Miséricorde, Work of Mercy, the occultist church founded by Eugene Ventras in 1851. The magical war had included the publication of La Basse, a novel by Juris K. Huysmans, which was a sensationalized account of a group of satanic sorcerers intended to portray de Guaita and his associates. The first duel between Bois and de Guaita and involved pistols. Bois had expected sinister magical influences to be exerted on the outcome of the duel, and indeed his horse suffered fits of unexplained terror on the way to the dueling ground. May be received from the one writing. Neither de Guaita nor Bois were hurt during the duel, but later it was discovered that one of the guns, it was never determined whose gun it was, had misfired, and its bullets had never left the chamber. The second duel was with sabers, and was between Bois and Pappos. This time, Bois' carriage collapsed twice on the way to the dueling ground. Pappos and Bois were both only slightly wounded in the duel, and they later became friends. After the death of de Guaita in 1897 from a drug overdose, Pappos became the last chief of the Kabbalistic Order of the Rose Croix. In 1891, Pappos formed an organization called Les Ordres des Supérieurs, Encausse of 3 degrees, commonly known as the Order of the Martinists, which was based on 2 extinct Masonic rites, the rites of Elus Cohens, or elected priests of Martinas Paschalis. We can call them not extinct, but dormant. And the rectified rite of Saint Martin of Louis Claude de Saint Martin, 1743 to 1803, era Vulgaris, a student of De Pasquale, who wrote under the pseudonym The Unknown Philosopher. The Papos claim to have come into the possession of original papers of De Pasquale and to have been given authority in the rite of Saint Martin by his friend Henri Viscount de Lage, who claimed that his maternal grandfather had been initiated into the order by Saint Martin himself, and who had attempted to revive the order in 1887. The Martinist order was to become a primary focus for Papos, and continues today, beautifully, as one of his most enduring legacies. Led by a Zen master in feminine form, the last I checked. She was of the darker races. In 1893, Papos was consecrated a bishop of l'Église Gnostic de France by Jules Doniel, who had founded this church as an attempt to revive the Cathar religion in 1890. In 1895, Doniel abdicated as primate of the French Gnostic Church, leaving control of the church to a synod of 3 of his former bishops, one of whom was Papos. In March of the same year, Papos joined the Ahator Temple of the Golden Dawn in Paris. Despite his heavy involvement in occultism and occultist groups, Encausse managed to find time to pursue more conventional academic studies at the University of Paris. He received his Doctor of Medicine degree in 1894 upon submittal of a dissertation on philosophical anatomy. He opened a clinic in the Rue Rodin, which was quite successful. Papos visited Russia 3 times, in 1901, 1905, and 1906, serving His Majesty Tsar Nicholas II and Her Highness Tsarina Alexandra, both as physician and occult consultant. In October 1905, he allegedly conjured up the spirit of His Highness Alexander III, the Tsar Nicholas's father, who prophesied that the Tsar would meet his downfall at the hands of revolutionaries. Papos allegedly informed the Tsar that he would be able to magically avert Alexander's prophecy so long as he was alive. His claim proved accurate. Nicholas kept his hold on the throne of Russia until 141 days after Papos's death. Although Papos seems to have served the Tsar and Tsarina in what was essentially a shamanic capacity, he was later curiously concerned about their heavy reliance on occultism to assist them in deciding questions of government. During their latter correspondence, he warned them a number of times against the influence of Frère Rasputin. Papos never became a regular Grand Orient Freemason. He opposed Masonry as being atheistic, in contrast to the esoteric Christianity of the Gnostic Church. Atheistic is without any particular religion as your dominant religion. So in Masonry, you need to believe in God or a higher power or the Grand Architect, but you are not required, or at least there is no establishment of a single religion in most of Masonry. something that a Christian would oppose. He opposed Masonry as being atheistic, in contrast to the esoteric Christianity of the Gnostic Church, the KORC, and the Martinist Order. Despite this, he organized what was announced as an International Masonic Conference in Paris on June 24, 1908. Very Janus-like. And at this conference, he received a patent from Theodor Reuss to establish a Supreme Council General of the United Rites of Ancient and Primitive Masonry for the Grand Orient of France and its dependencies at Paris. It was probably on the same occasion that Reuss conferred upon Papus the X degree of OTO for France, and Papus in turn assisted Reuss in the formation of the OTO Gnostic Catholic Church as a child of l'Église Gnostique de France. When John Yarker died in 1913, Papus was elected as his successor to the office of Grand Hierophant, international head of the Ancient and Primitive Rites of Memphis and Mizraim. The X degree, I say instead of the 10th degree, because of its popularity, or the popularity it's received by being included within the for being included in the group in which Malcolm X was also a member, El-Hajj Malik Shabazz, or Malcolm Little. When World War I broke out, Papus joined the French Army Medical Corps. While working in a military hospital, he contracted tuberculosis and died on October 25, 1916, at the age of 51. Nun Elif. His work include Traité élémentaire des sciences occultes, 1888, Lettero des Bohemians, 1889, Traité méthodique des sciences occultes, 1891, Lettero divinatore, 1901, Traité méthodique des Magi, pratique, 1932, and Les Sciences des Nombres, 1934, three of which were edited by his son, Dr. Philippe Encausse. Today is the day of the Immaculate Conception, 2020. During Advent before Christmas, 3 Magi visited the Christ child. Their practices overlap with these. References: Blitz Edouard, Ritual and Monitor of the Martinist Order, privately printed, Nevada, Missouri, 1896. Cavendish Richard, The Black Arts, G.P. Putnam's Sons, New York, 1967. Crow, W.B. A History of Magic, Witchcraft and Occultism, Aquarian Press, London, 1968. Crowley, Aleister, The Book of Thoth, 1944. Samuel Weiser, New York, 1969 and 1974. Howe, Ellick, Papus, and Man, Myth, and Magic, Richard Cavendish, Editor-in-Chief, Marshall Cavendish, New York, 1983. Howe, Ellick, The Magicians of the Golden Dawn, Routledge, and Keegan Paul, London, 1978. Young, Alex de, The Life and Times of Grigory Rasputin. Called Navi by His and Her Majesty. Dorset Press, New York, 1982. Les Forestiers, René, Les Cotismes Enfants au 19 et 20 siècles. Les Églises Gnostiques, ouvrage inédit publié par Antoine Favre. Arce, Milano, 1990. Mackintosh, Christopher, Eliphas Louis. In the French Occult Revival. Gerard Encausse, London, 1972. Papus, editor. The Kabbalah, 1892. Thorson's Artheringi, Wellingborough, Northamptonshire, 1977. Reuss, Theodor, Unser Orden in Orflam, Hübele uns, Ausgabe Ludwigshausen, 1912. Shepard, Leslie, editor. Encyclopedia of Occultism and Parapsychology, 2nd edition, Gale Research Co., Detroit, Michigan, 1984. Waite, Arthur, Edward. A New Encyclopedia of Freemasonry, Volume 1, University Books, New York, 1970. Webb, James, The Occult Establishment, Library Press, La Salle, Illinois, 1976. Webb, James. The Occult Underground Library Press, La Salle, Illinois, 1974. Originally published in Red Flame No. 2, Mystery of Mystery, a primer of Thelemic ecclesiastical Gnosticism.
Zenith, Jupiter.
By Tau Aperion and Helena, Berkeley, California, 1995, Era Vulgaris. Read by Christopher Brightnail Cohen. Sun Zenith. Venus. Exhibition of Gnostic Saints, 4 of 72, Paul Gaugin. Eugene Henri Paul Gaugin, 1848 to 1903, Era Vulgaris, by Tau Aperion. French painter, leader of the post-impressionist school and the synthesist movement, Gaugin resigned from a successful career as a Parisian stockbroker to devote himself to painting. Though he had little formal training therein, he was extremely unsuccessful at first, and rapidly lost all his money, as well as his wife and 5 children. After relatively brief stints in Martinique and Brittany, he moved to Tahiti in 1891, where he took a native wife and moved into a small cottage, which he named the House of Carnal Pleasures, and which he proceeded to completely fill with his paintings. He spent most of the remainder of his life in relative seclusion with his loves and his painting, in which he sought to discover and reveal pure nature. The life of Paul Gaugin provides us with an example of a man who flouted convention and abandoned material success in order to pursue his true will, and in doing so, transformed Western culture. Crowley strongly identified with Gaugin, both as a painter and as an initiate, and he formally added Gauguin's name to the list of saints in 1921, Era Vulgaris. References: Benton William, publisher, Encyclopaedia Britannica, 1768 and 1973. Burnett Robert, The Life of Paul Gauguin, Oxford University Press, New York, 1937. Le Bichon Yan, Gauguin, Life, Art, Inspiration, translated by I. Mark Paris, Harry N. Abrams, Inc., New York, 1986. Simmons, John, The King of the Shadow Realm, Gerard Duckworth & Co., Limited, London, 1989. Original publication date of this article was 2/1/97. Originally published in Red Flame No. 2, Mystery of Mystery, a primer of Thelemic ecclesiastical Gnosticism by Tau Apirion and Helena. Berkeley, California, 1995, Era Vulgaris. Read by Christopher Brightnell Cohen. This Day of the Immaculate Conception, 2020. Exhibition of Gnostic Saints, Ancient and Latter Day. Sir Richard Francis Burton, 1821 to 1890, Era Vulgaris, by Tau Apirion. English explorer, Orientalist, scholar, linguist, sexologist, mystic, and spy. He was raised in France and Italy and studied at Oxford. He served as a captain in the Bombay Native Infantry in what is now Pakistan from 1843 to 1848. He traveled the world in service to the British government and served as British consul on the island of Fernando Poo off the coast of Equatorial Guinea, in Santos, Brazil, in Damascus, and Trieste, where he died. Burton wrote the poem The Qasida of Haji Abdul al-Yazdi and translated the Arabian Nights of Layla wal Layl, also called the Thousand Nights and a Night, with copious annotations. Both of these works are included in Section 2 of the AA reading list. He also translated the erotic manuals, the Kama Sutra, the Ananda Ranga, and the Scented Gardens of Sheikh Nafzawi, which are given as recommended readings in Liber Artemis Iota. Burton also wrote a personal narrative of a pilgrimage to Mecca and Al-Madinah, which is the account of his participation in the Hajj in 1853, because he was a Punjabi, or Indian, Pathan. His success in this dangerous feat was due to his intimate familiarity with the languages and customs of the region, and also perhaps to the fact that he was an initiate of the Qadri order of dervishes. He was one of the first Europeans to explore East Africa, and was one of the discoverers of Lake Tanganyika and Lake Victoria, Nyanza. His other expeditions included one across the United States to Salt Lake City, and a voyage up the Congo River. Burton's frankness about sexuality was the most likely reason that his widow, in an effort to preserve his reputation, burned his memoirs after his death. Throughout his life, Burton continually sought passionately for gnosis, ma'arifa, which he pursued around the world in myriad forms. He was a student of the Kabbalah and of Hermeticism. He was an initiated Nagar Brahmin and Qadri dervish. He became a member of the Ismaili sect, or was one by birth, which claimed descent from the Assassins. And he was at various times a formal convert to the pantheistic Hinduism, Tantrism, Roman Catholicism, Sikhism, and Islam. Radiallahu an Haji Burton. Exhibition of Gnostic Saints, Ancient and Latter Day, 6 of 72, Sir Richard Payne, Knight, 1751 to 1824, Era Vulgaris, by Tal Apirion. English antiquarian, philologist, numismatist, free-thinking deist philosopher, expert on Greek literature, member of the radical Whig Party, of Parliament, and the Society of Dilettanti, as was Benjamin Franklin, friend of Lord Byron, patron of art and learning and country gentleman. Knight was born at Wormsley Grange in Herefordshire to a parson, Thomas Knight, and his servant girl Ursula Nash. He later fell heir to the fortunes of his grandfather, a wealthy ironmaster. He was a sickly child and was educated largely by tutors and by himself. His wealth enabled him to travel extensively around the world, especially in Italy, and he developed a keen interest in ancient art. He was elected to Parliament in 1780 and was elected to the Society of Dilettanti in 1781. This society, although founded as a club for cultured travelers by Sir Francis Dashwood in 1732, became a prominent amateur archaeological organization and financed a number of archaeological expeditions. It was under the auspices of the Society of Dilettanti that Knight's discourse on the worship of Priapus was published in 1786. This book, also published as 2 essays on the worship of Priapus, is included in Section 1 of the AA reading list. By the worship of Priapus, Knight did not mean specifically the cult of the Greek god discussed earlier, but phallic worship in general. Phallic worship is the worship of masculinity, often represented in the form of a phallus or a rectangle with rounded ends, including fertility cults. The book demonstrates in a scholarly manner the extensive and significant role phallic or rectangular worship played in many and various parts of the ancient world, East as well as West, as told in the symbolic language of ancient mythology and art. The metaphysical system set forth in the book is one of emanation. The supreme God is quintessential, male-female principle, embodying principles of creation, destruction, and renovation. The process of emanation takes place through a division of this intellectual being, or fire, into 2 principles, active and passive, male and female, formative and salvant. The divine essence, formative, meaning that which creates. And how does it, the penis which ejaculates, create? through the solvent are the willing away of the seminal membrane to reach the spermatozoa, which, if it wasn't cleared away through solvent or diffusion of everything else inside the vagina, would not emerge to enter the egg, which has been cleared of other fluids. So the active is overexpressive, and the passive reduces that expression to what is useful. The divine essence, or life force, and universal matter. Again, the process of emanation takes place through a division of this intellectual being, or fire, into two principles: active and passive, male and female, formative and solvent. The divine essence, or life force, and universal matter. All living beings are a result of the invigoration.
Rises.
All living beings are a result of the invigoration of the universal matter by the divine essence. Sexual intercourse could, then, be viewed as a sacred reflection of the divine mystery of emanation. Knight theorized that such a viewpoint was, indeed, that expressed in the sexual imagery and symbolism of the ancients, elements of which have survived and can still be seen even in the sacred art and architecture of modern times. Knight's other works include an analytical essay on the Greek alphabet, or an analytical essay on the Greek Alpha Sampi, 1791. Analytical Inquiry into the Principles of Taste, 1805. Inquiry into the Symbolical Language of Ancient Art and Mythology, Hieroglyphics, 1818. Two didactic poems, The Landscape, 1794, that which the grand architect of the universe sets out first, and The Progress of Civil Society, 1796, and Alfred, A Romance in Rhyme, 1823. I wonder if that's where we get Alfred in The Dark Knight. Knight's extensive collection of ancient coins, medals, stone carvings, and bronzes is now in the British Museum, of which he served as trustee, as did Christopher Brightnell Cohen's initiator into Sufism. References: Elie Bon, S. Austin, Elie Bon's Dictionary of English Literature and British and American Authors, J. B. Lippincott & Co., Philadelphia, 1871. Clark, Michael and Nicholas Penny, editors. The Arrogant Connoisseur, Richard Payne Knight, Manchester, University Press, Manchester, 1982. Goodwin Jocelyn, The Theosophical Enlightenment, Sunny Press, Albany, 1994. Knight, Payne Richard, A Discourse on the Worship of Priapus, 1786, in Sexual Symbolism, A History of Phallic Worship, with an introduction by Ashley Montague, Julian Press, New York, 1957. Original publication date 1995, updated 2/1/97. Originally published in Red Flame, number 2, Mystery of Mystery, a primer of Thelemic ecclesiastical Gnosticism by Thao Abirion and Helena, Berkeley, California, 1995, Era Vulgaris. Exhibition of Gnostic Saints, Ancient and Latter Day, Forlong Dux, 1824 to 1904, Era Vulgaris. By Theodor Major General J.G.R. James George Roche Forlong was a Scottish military engineer in the Anglo-Indian Army, who received acclaim from the governments of England and India for his brilliant feats of road building in the jungles of the Indian subcontinent during the Maratha and Burmese War. Forlong's lifelong hobby was the comparative study of the religions of man, a study which was facilitated by his knowledge of 7 languages. He avidly pursued this avocation during his 33 extensive travels in India, as well as after retiring from the military in 1876. He is the author of 2 monumental works on the subject: Faiths of Man, a Cyclopedia of Religions, 1906, and Rivers of Life, 1883. The latter is included in Section 1 of the AA reading list. Faiths of Man compare the various religions of mankind, demonstrating that many elements of the Christian mythos were borrowed from older religions. Rivers of Life traces the development of the great world religions back to their primitive origins in the worship of the sun and of the phallus. Dux is Latin for leader. In the Roman Empire, a dux was a military chief commanding the troops in a frontier province, and is the origin of the title duke. The term dux is used in Scotland to denote a student who is academically first in his or her class. References: Elibon, S. Austin, Elibon's Dictionary of English Literature and British and American Authors, J.B. Lippincott and Co., Philadelphia, 1871. Forlong, J.G.R., Faiths of Man, a Cyclopedia of Religions, Bernard Quaritch, 1906, University Books, New York, 1864. Forlong, J.G.R., Rivers of Life, or Sources and Streams of the Faiths of Man in All Lands, showing the evolution of faiths from the rudest symbolism to the latest spiritual developments. London, 1883. Original publication date, 1995. Updated 2/197. Originally published in Red Flame No. 2, Mystery of Mystery, a primer of Thelemic ecclesiastical Gnosticism by Theodor and Helena, Berkeley, California, 1995, Era Vulgaris. Read by Christopher Brightnell Cohen on the day of the Immaculate Conception, 2020.